This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. Napoleon Bonaparte, a name that conquered Europe. And yet, the man who bent nations to his will could never escape the chains of his own heart. This is the story of his love, his obsession, his madness. Stay with us and witness the tale of Napoleon's passion. The candles flickered against the stone walls of the French campaign tent. Outside, the night wind carried the sound of soldiers clattering sabers and murmuring prayers before battle. But inside, Napoleon Bonaparte, general of the army of Italy, future emperor, was hunched over a sheet of parchment. His quill scratched furiously, dipping into ink again and again. His words did not concern troop formations or enemy movements. They were not orders for the next morning's attack. Instead, they were confessions, pleas, longing. He was writing to her, to Josephine. Since I left you, I have been constantly depressed. My happiness is to be near you. I live in a state of continual anxiety. This was not the Napoleon the world would remember, the iron-willed commander, the ruler who crowned himself emperor, the man who bent Europe to his ambition. This was something else, a man consumed, trembling on the edge of obsession. But how did the most calculating strategist of his age fall victim to a madness, born not of politics, but of love? When Napoleon met Josephine de Beauharnais in 1795, Paris was still trembling under the aftershocks of the revolution. Blood had stained the guillotine, power shifted like sand. But in the glittering salons, where courtesans and generals mingled in candlelight, there was Josephine, widowed, elegant, 6 years older than Napoleon. She was a woman who knew the art of survival. Her husband, a supporter of the revolution, had been executed during the Reign of Terror. She had escaped a blade only by a narrow thread of chance. Now, she lived with a careful grace, moving through the world with charm, wit, and a disarming softness. Napoleon was captivated instantly. He was not yet the Titan of Europe, only a general with promise, a man of Corsican blood and sharp ambition. To Josephine, he must have seemed almost rough, provincial, unpolished, compared to the smooth men of Paris. But he pursued her with a ferocity that left her and everyone around them breathless. Within months, he asked for her hand. She hesitated. She had debts. She had lovers. She doubted whether this small, intense general could truly be her future. But Napoleon would not be denied. They were married in March of 1796, and from the very beginning, his passion burned dangerously bright. The Italian campaign was about to begin. France's armies were starved, ragged, and demoralized. The generals expected failure, but Napoleon stormed into Italy with a kind of ruthless genius. Yet even as victories piled up, his letters betrayed a man undone. Sweet and incomparable Josephine, what a strange effect you have on my heart. He wrote from Milan. You are leaving, you are coming, you are running, and I embrace you 1,000 times. He begged for her presence, cursed her absence, swore eternal devotion. His words grew frantic, desperate. At first, Josephine's replies were cool, almost perfunctory. She loved the comforts of Paris, its salons, its fashionable distractions. To her, Napoleon was a demanding husband, far away, writing endless pages of longing. But to Napoleon, Josephine became something else entirely. Not a wife, not a partner, but an idea, an obsession. Victory followed victory in Italy. Napoleon became a national hero. And still, he wrote, I wake up full of you. Your portrait and yesterday's intoxicating evening have left my senses no rest. Sweet, incomparable Josephine, what is this bizarre effect you have upon my heart? His letters grew darker when she delayed in responding. He accused her of indifference, even betrayal. And there was truth behind his fears. While Napoleon threw himself into war, Josephine entertained lovers in Paris. She remained the object of Parisian gossip, a woman of charm, beauty, and intrigue, while her husband, miles away, wrote letters that sometimes bordered on madness. He demanded loyalty. He demanded proof of affection. But Josephine was elusive. She gave him just enough to keep the fire burning, never enough to satisfy it. When Napoleon returned from Italy, his victories had transformed him. He was no longer just a general, he was a national figure, a man France looked to with awe. But his marriage was already cracking. He discovered her infidelities. He confronted her. Their arguments were volcanic, his rage terrifying, her tears manipulative. And yet, he could not let go. The man who defeated Austrian armies, who maneuvered whole nations like chess pieces, could not conquer his own heart. By the time Napoleon launched the Egyptian campaign, his letters had crossed from passion into torment. Far from you, I live the life of a man overwhelmed with ennui. Without your love, without you, there is no joy, there is no life. But in Cairo, in the suffocating desert heat, Napoleon himself strayed. He took mistresses, indulged in temporary comforts. His hypocrisy was plain. Still, he expected Josephine's loyalty. When he learned that she continued her affairs back in Paris, his fury erupted. For days he refused to see her upon returning to France. His pride as a man and soon as first consul was wounded. And yet, once again, Josephine's tears, her words, her fragile charm, pulled him back. Their bond was not simple love. It was a chain, a binding that grew tighter the more he tried to resist. As he rose to emperor in 1804, Napoleon's obsession with Josephine reached its peak. She was crowned empress beside him in the cathedral of Notre Dame. Yet even that day, behind the splendor, there was a shadow. Josephine could not give him an heir. Her womb, scarred by earlier pregnancies, left her barren. For Napoleon, the man who sought to build a dynasty greater than Rome's, this was devastating. His love and his ambition were at war. His letters became anguished again, torn between adoration and desperation. You alone can bring peace to my soul. Without you, all is empty. I live in a world without warmth. But the reality grew undeniable. Josephine could not secure his empire's future. The decision came slowly, painfully. In 1809, Napoleon told Josephine they must divorce. Eyewitnesses described the scene as heartbreaking. Josephine wept uncontrollably, collapsing in his arms. Napoleon himself sobbed, unable to speak at times. For hours they clung to each other. I still love you, he whispered. I always will. But I must do this for France. Their marriage was dissolved. Napoleon went on to marry the young Austrian Archduchess Marie-Louise, securing an heir and a new political alliance. Josephine withdrew to Malmaison, her estate outside Paris, but the letters never truly stopped. Even in separation, Napoleon wrote to her. He sent gifts, visited her, and spoke of her often. She remained his weakness. When Josephine died in 1814, just months before Napoleon's first abdication, he was devastated. She was the one who truly loved me, he said. I mistreated her, but I loved her. And even in exile on St. Helena, stripped of his crown, surrounded by the damp winds of the Atlantic, Napoleon whispered her name, Josephine. Historians have debated Napoleon's obsession for centuries. Was it love? Was it madness? Was it simply the weakness of a man otherwise consumed by power? His letters remain, more than any battlefield report, more than any imperial decree. They reveal the inner world of a man who conquered Europe, but could not master his own heart. A genius undone by longing, a conqueror enslaved by love. Napoleon Bonaparte obsessed, until the very end. Napoleon, the man who shattered the crowns of Europe, yet remained a prisoner of his own heart. His greatest victories were won on the battlefield, but his greatest defeat was within his soul, a wound he could never forget. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and explore our Dark Series playlist.